and welcome back to Baking with Miss Myles. Today we're going to do another favorite, especially of Miss Levangy's. We're going to make homemade pretzels. So what you need is, you need your recipe. You're going to need some yeast. Now I'll explain about that in a minute. You're going to need some water. You're going to need some butter. You're going to need some brown sugar. You're going to need a little bit of salt. And later on, when we boil them, you're going to need some baking soda and some water and some more butter. And also some coarse sea salt if you have any. If not, regular salt works just fine. Now, there are different kinds of yeast that you can use. I have 3 different kinds here. One is bread machine yeast, one is quick rise yeast, and one is active dry yeast. Now, the one we're going to use today, because I'm using a mixer, is going to be the quick rise yeast, which means we don't need to proof it first. We can just put it in and then let it rise. Now, when I do this at school, I do use the bread machine. So I use bread machine yeast, which works the best in the bread machines. And this stuff right here, it works really well too, but you do need to proof it in water and a little bit of sugar for about 10 minutes before you can use it. Okay everyone, so let's start the pretzels. So I have my mixer set up with a dough hook. You can also do this by hand, or you could do it in a bread machine. I do it in the bread machine at school because it's a lot easier, but for today we're going to be using the mixer. So what we need first is we need a cup of warm water. Now you don't want this water hot because if it's too hot it'll burn the yeast. So you want it just warm enough to activate it. So let's get... Yeah, so you want it about a little hotter than room temperature. We're going to throw that in. We're going to throw in 2 tablespoons of softened butter. Now, these can easily be made dairy-free because I am using vegan butter. I'm going to throw that in. 1, 2. Quickly wash my hands. And then we're going to throw in a tablespoon of brown sugar. Set brown sugar here. Put that aside. We're going to put in the flour next. So it calls for 2 and 3/4 cups of flour. So we're going to dry off our 1 cup. We're going to go 1, 2, and then find our 1/4 cup, which is Donald. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put that aside. Now I'm going to add the yeast. Now, like I was saying, I'm using quick rise yeast. So it calls for 1 package of yeast. So 1 package equals 2 1/4 teaspoons. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and then my 1/4. And then the last ingredient is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, when you're adding the salt in with your other ingredients, put it on the opposite side of your yeast. If you put it on top of your yeast, it actually kills it and stops it from activating. So you want to keep it as separate as possible until the end. So this is my 1/2 teaspoon. I'm going to throw it on the other side. And that's all the ingredients for these. So I'm going to throw in the dough hook. And we're going to start it off slow. Turn it up a little bit, and it's going to take a little bit to mix. You may need to help it on the sides. If you do this, be careful. Once you start seeing some dough mix, you can start turning it up a little bit. Turn it off, and I'm going to mix this a little bit. Now, one thing you will notice if you're making any bread yeast products, that it's not an exact science. Some days you'll need some more flour, some days you'll need some more liquid. It all depends on the humidity, it depends on the altitude, there's a whole bunch of different factors. So we're going to keep an eye on this, and I may need to add a little bit more water. We'll see. Scrape it down again. I have a feeling I'm going to need to add a little bit more water to this, so I'm just going to get some ready. Now, when you add the extra ingredients, just add a little tiny bit at a time so you don't over add. So it's looking a little dry, so I'm just going to add just maybe a teaspoon of water. There we go, it's starting to mix better now. Beat this for 5 to 8 minutes. I'll beat this here and then I'll show you when it's done and ready. Okay, so this has been going for about 7 minutes and it's looking good. You know it's done when it pulls away from the side and it's going to lightly bounce back when you touch it and it's not sticky anymore. So I'm going to turn this off. So that looks good. So this is the first step of this. Now what we need to do is take your bowl and you need to lightly grease it. You could do it with butter, you could do it with oil. I'm just going to spray it with a little bit of Pam. And we're going to throw this in because we're going to need to let it rise for about half hour or so until it, I would say, doubles in size. Now what I do to find it speeds it up is to put a little bit of saran wrap on top. And to throw a tea towel over top. And then to throw it in a small place. I usually put it in my microwave. Not turned on. And then we're just going to leave it there for about half an hour. And I'll be back then. Hi everyone and welcome back. It's been about 45 minutes, so we're ready to roll out our dough. First you need to grab a pan and we need to prepare it. So I'm going to prepare it by taking it and rubbing it with butter. This is so it doesn't stick. So we're going to take about that much. And I just put a little plastic wrap on my hand. And make sure it's good and covered because these will stick. Alright, there we go, and we can just throw that out later. So now we're going to go and grab our dough. And it should be raised up nicely. Oh, look at that. Perfect. I already washed off my workstation here, so I'm gonna take this. Oh, look how nice that dough is. And we're just gonna knead it a few times. And this recipe makes 8. So at school I make 4 batches of these. This is easily doubled if you want to make 16. So we're going to take the dough and cut it into 8 equal parts, or as equal as what you can get. So we're going to go half. So each of those will go into 4. So 4. And then we'll half these again. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you want them to be about even. If you notice any are bigger than the other ones, you can put them together and recut them. So now's the fun part. Now we roll them out. So you just take one, roll it up into a little bit of a snake, and then roll it down. So what you're going to want to do is start from the middle and roll out. So you put your pressure with here and here. You start rolling like that and start working out. The further out you get, you use your palms. So it's starting to look like that. And you can make these any shape you want. Now I do recommend the pretzel shape because it is easiest to do. So once you get it about the length you want it, you make it into the pretzel. So what I do is I turn it like that, flip it over once, and then stick it on. So there's your pretzel. And then we put it here to sit. So now we need to do that with the other 8. So now we have a nice pan all ready to go, and with Mr. Mackenzie and Miss Levangie supervising. And now we're going to take everything over to the oven to boil it and cook it. So I've already preheated the oven to 450, and I've also put on a pot of boiling water with 1/4 cup of baking soda. So we want it at a pretty rapid boil, but once it rapid boils, you can turn it down to about medium high, and you should be good. So what we're going to do is we're going to boil each of these for about 30 seconds, and that gives it that nice crispy outside. So I put about 4 on at a time. So be very careful when you do this. You just drop it right into the water. And I'm going to put the timer on. Oops. I spray this with a little bit of Pam afterwards just to make sure it doesn't stick. So this stays in for 30 seconds. Turn that back up just a tiny bit. And then once the 30 seconds is up, you take them out with a slotted spoon and put them right over here. And then we do the last 4. Again, be very careful when you do this. And I like to flip them over a little bit just so that it gets both sides. All right, that's about 30 seconds. I take them out with the slotted spoon. And we turn the water off because we're done with it. So what you do now is you take your coarse sea salt or regular salt if that's what you have. I like using the coarse because it's a little bit bigger than regular salt. And then you just take it and you sprinkle it on top of the pretzels. Now you don't need to completely cover them because I do add a little bit more once they come out. So something like that. And now we're going to throw them in the preheated oven for about 8 minutes or until they're golden on top. Perfect, and I'll come back to you once we're all done. So it's time to see if the pretzels are done. Oh, look how pretty those look. Now, they look like they're done. They're nice and golden brown on top, but the best way to check is with a thermometer. Now, bread is done when it reaches 190 degrees Fahrenheit on the inside, so let's check and make sure. And we are good. So we're gonna turn this off, turn the oven off because we're done with it. And take these over for the last step. So the very last step for these is we're gonna take some butter and brush it over the top. So I got a little pastry brush here. I'm gonna take a little butter. You don't want too much, just enough. And just put it over the top. And then we're going to take a tiny bit more salt and just sprinkle it over. I like a lot of salt on mine. Now, I recommend you take these right off the pan because they do tend to stick once they start cooling down. So we'll put them over here. What do you think, Mr. Mackenzie and Miss Levangie? Do you think those are good? And there we have it. We have some fresh pretzels. Enjoy them with pizza sauce or by themselves or anything you like. All right, that's it for today, guys. Stay safe and wash your hands, and I'll see you again hopefully tomorrow. Get the shake. Good boy. It's the pretzel. There you go. There's your pretzel. Was it good? No, it's all gone. It's all gone.